Hello and welcome to yet another edition of your weekly international current affairs program, Globewatch from the Cameroon Radio Television with me, Charles Bune. This week, the 15th anniversary of the Nelson Mandela International Day was commemorated worldwide. Instituted by the United Nations in 2009, it serves as an opportunity for each and everyone to consecrate 67 minutes, that is corresponding to the 67 years Nelson Mandela had for public service. What kind of a model of leadership did he provide to humanity as a legacy? My guest today on Globewatch is a life coach and somebody who spends most of his time talking about leadership. And he is the founder of Lead Missions International. Dr. Madison Ngafeeson, thank you very much indeed for being guest on Globewatch.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I believe that when I mention the name Mandela, what comes first into your mind is the word leadership.
Yes. Yeah. Anytime you talk Mandela, you're talking leadership. He remains an icon to whom all leaders look up to and aspire to become, because he was a leader who not only knew the way, showed the way, but went the way. And these are the kind of leaders that I want, the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be that leader who is exemplary, who not only tells people, shows people the way, but who has gone the way and who has showed us the way. So,
of course, you have so many examples of leadership in the world that you can name, that you can single out, that are sources of inspiration. What makes the leadership model and skills of Mandela unique?
I think one of the things that makes Mandela stand out is the sacrifice. When you spend 27 years in prison, you are cracking rocks, and you do that for the sake of the liberty or the freedom of a people. And then you come out of that same prison and you become the first democratically elected president of South Africa. And then at your inauguration, you invite your oppressors and the people that jailed you to sit there and watch the inauguration. For me, without any sense of remorse or revenge, for me, that is the epitome of leadership. A leadership that not only sacrificed, a leadership that was not only exemplary, but a leadership that forgave even the people that wronged you. That to me is the very essence of what great leadership is.
Mandela said that our life on earth is not only how we live it, it's equally how we impact people. When you look at his legacy, 15 years on after the Nelson Mandela International Day, you would teach leadership. In terms of theory and practice, what model, what theory, what school of thought does his leadership skills fall into?
I think I look at Nelson Mandela to be a true sense of a leader who really was there to influence people in a particular path. When you see the fact that he came out, and even when he was given power to lead South Africa, he led South Africa for as long, for a very short time. In fact, many people expected him to go on and on and on. But he decided to step down again from leadership because he's
5 years, one term.
Exactly. His desire was to show people and to give us an example to follow, and not really to grab onto power. For me, I still look at that to be something really, as a leader, I look at that to be something that is worth copying.
When you went to the United States and you founded Lead Missions International, did the experience and leadership skills of South Africa's first democratically elected person one of your sources of inspiration? What was it, a sense of inspiration for that leadership movement that you created?
You see, I have been, I would say, fortunate because when I went to the United States, which was in 2007, remember 2008 was an election year, and that is when President Barack Obama was actually elected president. But I was part of a group of few student leaders that actually met President Barack Obama in Louisiana when he had the very first meeting with all of the mayors of America, the black mayors of America, and I happened to be in that meeting. I happened to have listened to him. I happened to have shaken his hand. And the moment you met President Obama, you knew you met a great person. And when I think about that meeting, even till today, I remember Nelson Mandela. I remember his contributions. And because to me, Barack Obama was one of the people that stood on the shoulders of great people like Nelson Mandela, even in terms of his philosophy for leadership and his inclusive philosophy for liberating his people. So I think that all of the other great leaders have learned from him. And I, as a student of leadership, I have also learned from Nelson Mandela and the likes of Barack Obama that followed after.
At Lead Missions International, you hold conferences globally. First, what are your key priorities at this non-for-profit making institution? You
see, when we talk about leadership, the first thing people do is they look up to some director, some president, some minister. That's what they think about. Some king, some emperor or something like that. But
some bank executives.
Exactly. Some maybe in the corporate world, yes, and general manager and things like that.
Generals and whatever in the military.
Exactly. But Lead Missions International actually looks at leadership a little bit differently, and which is that we all are leaders. The only thing is that we don't lead in the same area. I may be, you are not a leader in my family. I lead my family. So in terms of my family, you are not the leader. I am the leader. In terms of your career, you are the leader. I am not the leader. So each one of us is a leader just in some other way. So when we think about leadership, we think about influence. We think about your sphere of influence. What is it that you have been called to lead? Is it in your career? Is it in your business? Is it in your family? Is it in your personal life? Or is it in public service, which is where most people look when they talk about leadership? So what makes Lead Missions very distinctive is that we focus more than anything else on self-leadership. Because we believe that if everybody led themselves well, they will be more than qualified to lead any and everybody that they come across.
And how do you help people to become self-leaders? How do you do it? How do you do that globally? You hold conferences in Australia, in Canada, in China, in the US, in UK, in Africa, and I'll be coming to Cameroon in a moment.
So the thing that we do is we really challenge people to look inward. So instead of looking outward and blaming what they see, they look inward. And when you look inward, you might also have some blame to share with the inward man. And so we challenge people, number one, to look inside and ask yourself, what was I created for? What was I born to? What is the impact I want to create? Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, each one of these great leaders that we revere today.
Pope John Paul II.
Pope John Paul II. All of these great leaders that we revere today, they stood up one day and they decided that they were going to live to their fullness of potential. They decided that they knew what their dream was, and they worked to achieving that dream that they saw in their mind's eye. And then today we revere them because they followed through and they got all of us to rally around that and to move forward. So when I look at that, I see a model to follow, but it always starts with the person inside. It starts with the individual and not with the crowd.
What does the coaching experience look like? What is the course outline? How do you frame your managerial skills that you are transferring to these people who may be church leaders, community leaders, non-governmental organizations, those in the public and private sectors? How does your course outline, the coaching course outline?
Yes. So we take an inside-out approach. So we start with the individual, the person, then we go to the family, then we go to the career and business, then we go to the community, then we go to the country. Okay. So we start by working on the individual, how can they achieve their own personal dreams? Then we go now to the family. How do you extend that to the people that are in your family? How do you extend that to your career and to your business? And then we seek for how you can be consistent. And when you live out your life, you live an inside-out approach life. So that is the framework that we use for our coaching and leadership.
Last year, you had leadership conferences in Cameroon, and this year you came back again for another set of leadership conferences. And amongst them, you always hold conferences for men, women. Why too much interest in Cameroon? I know it is your home country.
Yes, like they say, charity begins at home. I love Cameroon. Cameroon is my country. For all of the hundreds of countries in the world, this is the one God chose to birth me in. So I have no choice but to contribute to the good of my country. So Cameroon will always be dear in my heart because it's my country. But secondly, it's also because whatever we can do in Cameroon, that will be a proof of concept that it can work elsewhere in the world. So I want, anything that you have not tried and proven in your own home, don't be too quick to export it, right? So I want us to try it in my own home and in our own kitchen. And when it works, we can say, come taste.
This is a kind of knowledge import substitution, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
the knowledge economy, wow.
So we want to try it in Cameroon, see that it works, and we can export it to other nations of the world and say, see what we did in our own country and see how it helped
For the years that Lead Missions International has been existing, when you look at the number of people you have coached, do you have estimates of your global length and breadth?
Yes. So right now, we stand somewhere around 18,000 leaders that have been trained in over 55 countries of the world.
And what feedback do you get from them in their various engagements that they have in where they work?
In fact,
that it has been transformational for them?
Yes. In fact, before I came on this set, I just read a message from one of the people that attended our conferences in Germany. She's a German, and she was telling me that she is actually reading my book because in my book I talk about self-leadership. And she was talking about how she is now implementing the concept that she learned. So whether it's in Germany, that I just read a message a few minutes ago, or it's in Cameroon, I think the big feedback that we are receiving is people saying, my life is changing. Because most of the time, when they talk about leadership, the people are looking at some other person. This other guy who is here, that other lady who is over there, they don't look at themselves. But as people begin to look at themselves, say, what changes can I make in me so that I lead me well, and then I lead my family well, my career, my business, my community, then we have business to talk about.
One of the ways you have enabled that to happen is that you have penned your thoughts in some publications. Amongst the books you have published, what kind of message do you want to send to people when it comes to leadership that they should be doing? You can pick any of your publications.
Yes, so I'll talk about my recent book, which is The Day Before Tomorrow, How to Make Today Count.
Okay.
So in my book, the thesis is that I argue that your best day is not yesterday. Every one of us has a yesterday, but yesterday is gone. It is finished. You can't do nothing about it. But the other thing is that people who have missed yesterday, they tend to push things for tomorrow. Tomorrow I will do that. Tomorrow I will become a great father. Tomorrow I'll be a great leader. Tomorrow I'll start my business. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. But nobody has ever seen tomorrow. In fact, nobody has ever lived tomorrow, including you, including me. No one of us. The only day we have is today. Let us use today to transform the yesterday we never wanted. Let us use today to increase the yesterday that we always loved, and let us use today to create new tomorrows. So my message is always use today to lead your life, because today is the only day you and me have been given. So my mantra is, don't just count your days, make your days count.
Let me come back to your Yaoundé leadership conferences. Like I said, last year you had one, this year there was another one. What differences do you make of both episodes?
So I think that we are growing our reach. When we did,
But one thing I noticed that your gatherings are always energy filled, so you can go ahead.
yes, so we are gathering a lot of momentum because last year we had a leadership summit, and then our inaugural we inaugurated a chapter for Cameroon. But this year we now launched into a full range of programs. In fact, this year we had our church leaders conference because we love the church. We want to be able to serve in raising up leaders in the religious circles. And secondly, we also had the data science conference. So you've heard about artificial intelligence, you've heard about how it's going to transform the world. We thought that what about bringing something that is going to help the youth of Cameroon especially. Okay. And so we had, I had brought some of my Harvard, one of my Harvard colleagues was here with me, and then Dr. Mark Atem, who is also a Cameroonian. We put together a conference that was to raise awareness of the importance of data science in the world and and the place that Cameroon can take in the leadership when it comes to the data sciences. And then lastly, we talked about, we had the leadership summit, which this year had men lead for the men, leading lady for the women, and we have rolled out a new program called Next Generation Conference, which is for the 30-year-olds and under, where we want to be able to train emerging leaders that are definitely going to be the leaders of today and tomorrow.
In a moment, our conversation will come to an end, but today you are basically providing skills for people in leadership, management, how to shape communities, but this is not your background. I just want to understand how you transition from your educational background or professional basis, which is quite different from what you are doing today.
Well, I think I would rather say it's not really necessarily transition as it is an evolution. Okay. So for instance, I am I'm a professor of analytics, Palm Beach Atlantic University, and that is what I've been doing professionally for the last 12 years plus. But I see myself, I have evolved into becoming and seeing myself as a leader. So I see myself as somebody who leads in my family, who leads in the education sector, who leads in entrepreneurship, because I'm an entrepreneur myself. I own 2 businesses, and then who leads in those different facets of life. So I see that my core for me is leadership, and then I lead in different areas and spheres as I have skills and expertise.
There is one area which dominates global talk today, Cameroon included, and that, of course, is the cyberspace or the virtual world. And one key feature of the virtual world today, or professions, is what they call social media influencers, who do direct communication with people through their mobile phones and whatsoever. When you look at the content, their followership, and how they can shape the mindsets of people, have you ever thought of having conversations, meetings with influencers on how to shape their content at times? Because, the cultural divide is not always the best in some of those issues.
It's interesting that you raised that. I don't think that I have particularly thought about, how we can shape their content and all of that. But I understand the power of social media, especially through the COVID years, 2020 to 2024. I think the rise of social media influencers has reached its peak these years. Yeah. But I think that...
Because whether we like it or not, they automatically leaders.
Exactly.
They lead.
So they are influencers.
They have a number of followers.
Exactly. So once you influence, you're a leader. Now the question is, what kind of leader are you? So how I wish that social media influencers will use their platform to educate rather than miseducate, to communicate rather than miscommunicate, to unite rather than divide. And so those are the things that I care about when it comes to social media.
I'm putting this question to you because when I look at the agenda of the next president of the United Nations General Assembly, who happens to be somebody you know so well and who comes from your home country, Cameroon, Philemon Yang, one of his 10 points agenda is to fight against hate speech. And one of the avenues where hate speech spreads so fast is social media. And we need leaders in that area. We need the Mandelas in that area, the Barack Obama in that area. By the way, Barack Obama launched the famous electronic campaigns in 2008.
My mentor, Mr. John Maxwell, just published a new book that is basically a few months old now. It's called High Road Leadership. And in his book, he's talking about how there are three kinds of leaders: high road leaders, low road leaders, and middle road leaders. And he talks about how high road leaders seek to bring people together. They build bridges among peoples, among communities, and how low road leaders try to break and destroy those bridges. And so, as I think about his agenda, I believe it's a wonderful agenda. By the way, congratulations to His Excellency. But I think that in this world that we live today, we should seek to really become high road leaders. We should seek to build bridges. We should seek to unite people. We should seek to talk. And we will always differ, right? As long as there are two people, there are two opinions. As long as there are 1 billion people, there will be 1 billion opinions. But we can have a billion opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is wrong when we refuse to listen to one another on the merits of the case so that we can promote and move our world forward.
One but last question. As a life coach with enormous experiences, you watch social backgrounds, economic backgrounds, political backgrounds, legal backgrounds around the world. What do you think is the greatest threat to good leadership today?
I think that the greatest threat to true leadership today, I would say, is that people are self-focused. So if I am going to be a leader, my focus should not be on me, because leadership is really about others primarily. In fact, somebody said, with the exception of one person, the rest of the world is made up of others. So if the rest of the world is made up of others, then every leadership should be a leadership that says, what about the other person? In fact, the golden rule says we should treat others as we want to be treated. In other words, leadership, true leadership, really centers around us understanding this concept of others. So I would say, if you want to be a great leader in today, and this is what I believe is failing today, is that people are doing self-centered leadership. In other words, they are the focus of themselves.
I, me.
Yes.
Finally, based on what you said, what will you advise people today, those in power, those in the corporate sector, who shape the way we function in our communities? What kind of advice will you give them for a better world, for a better led world?
So I will say this, and I read this quote just in my trip here. And the quote said, it says that, it's talking about, by the way, leadership and the fact that leadership is service. And it says, if serving is below you, then leadership is beyond you. So leadership is service and leadership is serving. We were called as leaders so that we can serve serve our people, serve our careers, serve our businesses, serve our communities, serve our nations. When we forget that mandate that we are servants, then we have lost it in leadership, because the very essence of leadership is service. So if serving is beyond you and me, or service is something that we can't do, we can't stoop low as to go there, then leadership is not for us. Something else is for us.
And with that, we conclude the interview. Dr. Madison Ngafeeson, thank you very much indeed for being guest on our program.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.